Next up on the number one tee.
Well, hello and welcome to your digital tea time. I am your host, Tori Totless, and today I am joined with one of my buddies, Angela Hurt. Hi, Angela.
Hi, how are you, Tori?
Good. Thanks for being on today. I appreciate it. And then we have owner of Practical Golf and author of Amazon's bestseller, The 4 Foundations of Golf, John Sherman. Hi, John. How are you today?
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you, so to speak. And thanks for having me on the show.
I appreciate it. So little background. We are actually reading the 4 Foundations of Golf in our monthly book club. And already we've only gotten through part 1 and the women are raving about it. It's really an easy read and it's very relatable too. And so I appreciate it.
I thank you I saw you had tagged me when you shared it, and I appreciate you doing that. It's very cool and a bit surreal for me to see the book spread around like that. So I'm happy to hear that your audience is enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's very exciting and very exciting. So let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about the 7 habits that will guarantee you will make a better golfer. John posted a similar post to his Instagram and Twitter the other day. And I was like, that's the episode right there, John. Let's talk about that. So before we get into it, Angela, I want you to share a little bit about what's going on with your golf game right now. Fill us in.
I haven't played since October.
I know.
So there's not much to say.
But what is that like? That's most of, John, you're in the Northeast too, right?
Yeah. It's, I haven't played, what is it? It's December 22nd today. I haven't played around since maybe early to mid-November. I do hit balls inside though. I hit balls every day in the off season. Yeah.
Do you have a simulator at home or do you go to a place and hit balls? What do you do?
I have a simulator set up in my house that I've been using for years, potentially upgrading it this winter, which is exciting. But yeah, I have a space that I shared it with my kids when they were younger. It was a bit of a playroom area, but now they've kind of abandoned it. So it's my space now.
I like it. Nice. Bye-bye. And Angela,
That said, I have hit some balls. So when I say I haven't played golf, I've not been on a real golf course. So I don't know what it's like to hit my club into the ground. Just a,
fair enough.
Cushion. Yeah.
Angela has a fabulous simulator at home too. Do you want to share about that, Angela?
Yeah, it's just something I put in during COVID. A little Foresight GC Hawk that is really great. Minus my hitting that, I've realized that it's too hard. Somebody told me I don't have enough cushion under it, but outside of breaking my hand every other round or practice round, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And you guys both use it a lot because I feel like if I were to build something like that in my house, like I'd feel like, yeah, I would use it, but then I actually wouldn't. But you guys both are using it on a consistent basis, huh?
Well, we don't have the warm weather that you have. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I would say I use mine predominantly November through March/April. I don't spend as much time up there during the golf season, but it's been, I like to use my off season if I'm going to make some changes to my game or do some experiments. I kind of do it in that environment. And then when I'm in season, I'm not, kind of going with what I've got. So yeah, it's been awesome for me to use it during the cold weather months here. I live in New York, so we get some mild winters and we get some bad winters, so I'm not playing too much.
Yeah. I'm from Rochester, New York, so I get it.
You know pain.
Yeah, go Bills. So
my son is a huge Bills fan. He's very excited for the upcoming playoffs.
Fantastic. Well, Angela's in Kansas City, so this could we could go sideways right now. We don't want her to sign off, John. Angela, so tell us about your summer. Tell us about your season. Like, how was your golf game? What were you most proud of? What do you want to work on moving towards 2023? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So interesting about making changes to your game. I finally started taking lessons a year before last. Went from a 15 handicap up to an 18, which I think I've mentioned before. I cry often during a round.
Yeah.
The gratitude, practicing gratitude, John, is something that I need to work on. But maybe grit too. Here, having the golf simulator, it really did change things for me because I did what John just said. I went and took a few lessons just to find some things that were going on, and then I practiced them. So when I hit last season, I was able to kind of really put those things into practice. I was no longer feeling like I was practicing them. It just kind of came a little more natural, and got down to a 12, maybe 11 at one point. I hope it's back up to a 13. I know we balanced that whole gosh, dang it. But my focus became keeping the ball in play, which was a challenge for me off my driver, and then short game. And now I think this year, if I can figure out how a really good way to practice short game and putting in my simulator, that would be great.
So I'm glad you brought up the big dog, because you hit a long ball. Angela does. And John mentions in his book that his driver used to be his worst, his biggest nemesis. And I can understand that too. I hit a pretty big ball, and you get to a point, at least I do, where you become so scared of swinging free with that club that it just brings more harm than good. You know what I mean? Like that fear on the tee box with that driver can sometimes be debilitating. So actually I wanted John to fill us in on really like what that was like with why you hated your driver so much and how that kind of went forward.
I know that feeling very well. It's not pleasant to step up to any tee box and have no prediction of where the ball is going to go, because it could go anywhere. But yeah, I think one of the things that was really holding my game back was the swings off the tee. And that's when you're just hitting a massive block or pull. And it's just so damaging to the round, because obviously it's going to hurt your score. You're going to go out of bounds into the trees, a penalty area, bunkers. But on top of that, I think when you can't keep the ball in play off the tee, I think it just bleeds into all the other parts of the game.
Absolutely.
It sets the stage for the rest of the hole and a lot of times the rest of the round. So yeah, it was something when I took a hard look at my game and I said, well, I want to compete more. I want to be a better tournament player. What can I do to fix this? And you mentioned grit earlier. I think, one of the things about grit is like, what can you do to confront this problem and have a problem solving attitude versus, oh, I'm just going to avoid the driver and keep it in the bag. Cause that's what I was doing. I wasn't using it as much as I should. And fortunately, having the simulator, I have a SkyTrack launch monitor, which is really accurate for ball flight and metrics like spin rate, launch angle, and seeing where the ball's going. So for a few winters, I spent a lot of time doing, we talk about my habits, practicing with intent, super focused on my driver, impact location, mainly where the face is pointing at impact. That is what's giving you those big misses left to right. I'm trying to optimize like tee height, my launch angle, just stuff like that. So I could bring that out to the course in the spring and the summer and be like, okay, now I know my setup. I know my quote unquote feels. I understand my dispersion. So I kind of tackled the problem head on and saying like, well, what can I do to narrow that dispersion? And it took probably a few winters of that type of work. Whereas now like driver is now my favorite club in the bag. I embrace it now. I want to hit it as much as possible, but I was that golfer that looked at it with disgust and fear for a very long time.
And just out of curiosity, what club would you use then off the tee when the driver was put away?
I think one of my favorite clubs for a long time was my 3 hybrid.
Yeah.
I would default to that 4 iron, depending on the courses I would play, but I would look at holes where now I would say like, I'm going to feast on this hole of my driver. And I'd be like, I could hit a 4 iron here.
Yeah.
I was looking for a reason not to use the driver wherever I could.
Yeah.
And that's, if you do want to shoot your lowest scores like that, that's not the best way to do it.
Yeah.
It is, I believe it's, people, I say, well, putter's the most important club in the bag for scoring. I would argue for a lot of players, it's your driver. Because you can inflict so much damage with it, and you can give yourself such a scoring advantage if you can hit it well and embrace it as well.
Yeah.
Not that putter's not important. I don't want to say that, but the driver is a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
I think it just tanks your confidence of the things that you were saying. It's like, it tanks your confidence in everything. And then when you get up to the next tee box, you don't want to pull it out. And I'm like you, I would grab my 4 iron. And I tried to convince a guy I was taking lessons with last year that I didn't need that extra 40, 50 yards off the tee box.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to hit a wedge when you can hit a 7 iron?
Well, that's the thing is you're putting more pressure on the rest of your game.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels nice. It feels nice and safer to take the shorter club, but you're going to have to pay for that somewhere. And that's on the approach shot. And your approach shot's going to be longer. It's going to be harder to get it on the green or even around the green. So you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball immediately when you are, kind of I always think of it as like a turtle going into its shell when you're just kind of scared and you're like, I'm just going to hit this iron for safety.
Yeah.
There are ramifications to that as well.
Yeah.
Well, Tori, I think that's what hurt my approach shot is that I stopped using my driver, and I would rather hit a 140 to 150 shot to the green than a 65 to 85 because I didn't have enough practice with that.
Yeah.
Because I did just benched my driver for a while.
Oh yeah. And I have too. But again, once you get those wedges down, you won't want that 150-yard shot anymore. Trust me.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so much when you can hit driver well and you feel like you can land your wedges on the green most of the time, golf becomes a very simple game.
Doesn't it?
It really does.
It does. So Angela, give us your big, scary, uncomfortable goal for 2023 as far as with your golf game.
I don't know. It's just got to get under a 10 so you spell my name right. That's all I really care about.
Angie said she doesn't like her name spelled. Well, is it with when I say Angie, you like it with just an I? Is that how you prefer
when
it?
You spell it out, when you type it, it's no E.
No E. And I said, I'm going to spell it with an E until you become a single digit.
I feel your pain because I'm a John, Jon. My name's Jonathan. I think my mother's the only person who calls me Jonathan still, but most people spell it John because they just don't know. So I feel your pain.
Yeah. So it's definitely, my goal is to become a single digit handicap, but,
which is a great goal.
I want to have fun too. And it's hard to, there's so many things in these 7 habits, John, like managing your expectations, for example. Like in my head, I should be a single digit handicap, but I'm just not in skill nearly there. So when I set those goals, I'm unlike some people who really have fun achieving those. I get pissed off constantly. So it's a balancing act.
I'm actually not a huge fan of specific handicap goals. I'd prefer people. And not to say that you say like, oh, I want to become a 6 handicap. I'd rather you think about what is holding me back in my game that's preventing me from getting there. And I think stats and keeping track of your shots can help with that and give you some good ideas. But I don't set handicap goals for myself. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not saying people shouldn't do it, but I prefer you to break down the parts of your games and the habits that ultimately you're going to have to change some habits on and off the course to make those parts of your game better. And ultimately that will lead to the lower handicap. So I'd rather people kind of get more granular in their habits and what in their game needs to improve. And then the handicap takes care of itself, because I think sometimes what happens when you do set the number is that it's kind of hanging over your head in every round that you play. And when you're posting those scores and you're looking at your gin, it's like, oh, I just, I used to play that way where I would hit a shot and be like, well, I'm not going to post the score I need for the differential today. And then that just kind of set off this like really bad mental spiral and not having much fun. So golf, like I got attracted to golf because I love numbers and I love achieving things like that. And I had to almost unwind all of that and do the opposite to get to where I wanted to go. So it's tough because we all want to know, what'd you shoot today? What's your handicap? That's all we ask each other.
I've started asking people if they had fun. Like how
that's what I prefer is like, did you have fun today?
Yeah. And I only have fun if I do well. So that's the challenge. But I did. So I use my watch, and I used to keep my score after every hole. I put it in there, and then I would go back to Jen and then enter hole by hole. But when I did that, when I completed each hole, it would tell me how many over or where I was to par. And it became my focus, and it ruined my game. And so when I turned that feature off and I didn't know exactly where I stood, I started playing better. And
it's a great idea.
A little bit better.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it could be like a noose around your neck, that number, when you play. And that's no way to, I feel like you play your best golf when I always say you're not caring too much and you're not caring at all. It's like somewhere in between. And when you care too much about score, if it's there all the time, you're not going to just kind of unleash your inner athlete and be free out there.
Yeah.
I like that, inner athlete. So John, I still have to ask you the same question though. So looking into 2023, what kind of golf goal do you have? Especially since you mentioned tournament golf earlier in the conversation.
We did an episode about this on our podcast a few months ago. and it was before my club championship. And I said, like, I want to win this thing very badly, but I don't go into it like as a goal. And I ended up winning it. It just happened. Like
Nice.
I don't set tangible goals. From my main goal next year in 2023 is that my barometer is fun. I just finally booked a trip to Scotland. I'm going to go play golf for the first time outside of North America. That's exciting to me.
That's
I'm signed
really
up for a bunch of tournaments, but I always ask myself, I love competing. I play a lot of, I've just missed out on getting into the US Mid-Am the last couple of years. I very badly want to make it to that tournament. But I can't control, it's a one-day qualifier. It's hard to control how other people are going to play, how I'm going to play. I'd love to get some more like top 10s and local tournaments. I'd love all of that, but I don't set out. I have my habits in terms of my practice, my strategy, the things I discuss in the book, but I just want to, because I had a very long run of not enjoying golf. Like, I just want to have fun no matter what I'm doing, whether it's playing with my buddies in Scotland or just for fun or in these tournaments. That's what the question I keep asking myself. And sometimes I pull out of tournaments if I feel like I'm getting burnt out, and I'll just go play at my course and kind of like stress-free rounds. So that's ultimately my goal, is like just enjoying the experience of golf all the time.
Yeah, I like it. So let's get into these 7 habits. So
Sure.
John, why don't you kick us off with your first habit that will guarantee you become a better golfer? I want to hear it.
So the first one, sometimes I forget them myself, so I have it up here on the screen. Luckily,
I love it.
Practicing with intent. Long story short, I think the mistake I made as a junior golfer is I would go to the range and just hit hundreds of balls, hit. And I remember my mom, when I first took up golf, my mom would sit there. I would get like 300 balls and I would just hit them over and over again until my hands bled. And I got better. I got good at golf, but it got to a point where like there was this driving range me, and then, me playing in high school tournaments, 2 different golfers. And I'm like, why am I so good on the range, but on the course, I'm kind of clueless. And what I realized much later on was that I wasn't practicing with intent. I was doing what I call in the book are zombie range sessions, where I don't have a target. I'm just hitting, not absorbing feedback. And you get into a groove and ultimately you start hitting some really good shots. But that's not the question golf asks you. It asks you to hit a shot every few minutes when you have a lot of time to think about what's going on. So there's a number of ways you can practice with intent. I try to give a lot of ideas in the book, but it first starts off with, what's my target? Are you going through a routine? Are you after you're hitting the ball, are you absorbing the proper feedback? Feedback for me is, how did I strike it? How was my ground contact? How did the ball fly through the air in relation to my target? Absorbing that information, and then if I need to make an adjustment on the next shot, do it. So I think a lot of golfers go out there with no idea how to practice, and that's one of the problems I try and solve for them through the book.
What's your ideal practice session? Like time wise and, percentage in short game and putting and full swing. What does it look like for you?
I think it depends on the golfer. I'm not a range rat. I get bored, to be honest with you. If I hit balls for more than 30 or 45 minutes, I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
So for me at my level, I've been working on my skill for 25 years. I'm not going to break through that much more. So for a golfer like me, I'm more in maintenance mode. I'm absorbing what's going on the course and seeing, well, do I need to make an adjustment while I practice? Whereas a beginner to intermediate player, I would say, a productive practice session, I would prefer something like 50 to 60% long game, like driver, irons, and then somewhere between 20, 30% putter, wedge play. The biggest gains that any golfer are going to see in scoring breakthroughs is with your driver and your irons. Like that Mark Brody, proved that with strokes gained. If you want massive drops in your handicap, you're going to have to spend some time with your approach clubs and your tee shot clubs quite a bit. So I'd really like people to spend a lot of time there. I think getting lessons is a great idea, and getting ideas on how to practice and drills that are custom to your swing. If you're not, a lot of the skill building exercises I love doing, which is challenging, where you can strike the ball in the face of the club, keeping track of that. You can do it with foot spray, challenging yourself to start the ball in different directions. That's really face control. So I do some out of the box practice things. Tempo, I use something called tour tempo, which gets beats you can swing to. So those are all ideas you could do to practice with intent. But I think it depends on the player, is my long-winded response.
Absolutely.
I want you to kind of work on the stuff that seems to be holding you back the most rather than going to the stuff that makes you comfortable, because you might only get marginal gains there. I'd rather you have some bigger breakthroughs on parts of your game that are really giving you trouble.
And I'm curious, since you said you were in maintenance mode, which made a lot of sense to me, what do you think will help you break that barrier in tournaments then? Like, how do you go into tournaments thinking, okay, I'm going to play better because, like, what preparation would you do for that then?
A lot of it has been experience for me. I've been playing, I'm almost 40 now. I kind of got back into golf when I turned 30, and I've been playing tournaments the last 7 or 8 years. I had some experience in high school and a little bit in college, but it's taken a good 5+ years to be comfortable with the pressure, people watching me, having a routine, my focus, how I can get into kind of a meditative state over the ball. I think in the last year, I had a lot of big breakthroughs in tournaments and even in the club championship, is because I was able to be more comfortable, less nervous, and just feel really locked in over the ball. And I think my skill increased. I've gotten better with every club in the bag, but that was, I'm very fascinated by what our minds, how they hold us back in this game. And a lot of it has been mental things. I've gotten better as a ball striker, but I think I'm when you play in tournaments, Tori, you probably know this, is that it's a different game. It's not like playing a Nassau on the weekend with your friends or something like that. You're on an island, you're by yourself. So I think for me, it's getting myself into those moments more often to getting the experience necessary, and then sharpening my skills as much as I can. I don't have any big breakthroughs anymore in my ball striking. Yeah. But I do think I have more breakthroughs in the mental part of the game.
Yeah. And what do you think about practicing with intent?
I like it better than what I used to do, which is what I think a lot of people do, is just going out and hitting at the range, right? Like when you don't know what you don't know, that's what you do. You just go and hit. When you're initially just trying not to whiff the ball to, am I hitting it consistently? But I always joked, I'm so damn good at the range, and I go out on the course and it's like, well, that range is awfully big. You're always on target. So I do like it a lot better. I also get bored, but I used to have a tendency to go out and practice the things I was already good at just because it gave me confidence and made me feel good, but it didn't help me get any better. So yeah, now it's pretty targeted.
Yeah. All right, John, let's move on.
The only way I practice now, I should say, not to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And do you guys listen to music while you practice? I do. I have to have earbuds in. John, Angela, do you have to have earbuds in?
I don't. I'm not a fan of it for myself, because I wouldn't listen to music on the golf course, especially when I'm competing. So I'm not against it. I think it's fine for some people, but for me, like, I like to hear the sound of the ball. Like I'm wearing AirPods right now. I don't wear them when I practice. I'd prefer to hear the ball and all that stuff, but I think it depends on the player.
And I listened to this Imagine Golf, and something recommended, listen to Mozart. Just over and over again, and it just zones you out. And so when I'm in my golf sim room, I will put that on and just do that so that I don't think about anything. So it's not music I'd want to sing to or that I typically would listen to, but I did that a few sessions last year. It was pretty interesting. My focus changed a lot.
Yeah, that is interesting. All right, John, let's move on to number 2.
We are going to talk about choosing smarter targets. I'm going to try and go quicker here because
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
I could keep you here for 7 hours. So long story short with strategy. And this is a way for golfers to, I believe, this is one of those things where you can change your handicap overnight if you weren't picking if you weren't picking targets optimally. I think most golfers have it backwards. I think they are too conservative off the tee and too aggressive with their approach shots. And what I mean by that is what we discussed earlier, is a lot of golfers like to play so safe off the tee and lay back. And then they always are going at the pin by default with their approach shots. So in a very simplistic, general way, again, I can't speak for all golfers, but I think it's backwards. And the work of Mark Brody and Scott Fawcett and very smart statisticians has shown us that we want to get the ball as far as we can off the tee in play, obviously. But then when it comes to approach shots, there's nothing to be gained by chasing tucked pins. If the pin's on the front of the green and you're picking that number, or it's tucked in the back left and you're aiming over there, you're going to lose more than you're going to gain. So I tell most golfers, aim at the center of the green and take more club towards the back yardage, and that solves most of your issues with approach shots. It can get more granular if you're a better golfer and you want to plan it out in a little bit more of an advanced way. But for most players, like that basic framework on approach shots, like save shots overnight. Yeah. So yeah, that's very simplistic. Having a decision-making process. I try and give people that in the book and understand why, but I'd prefer most players start to get a little bit more aggressive off the tee and then pump the brakes with approach shots. That's as simple of an explanation as I can give.
Yeah. And I read this section of the book right before a round last week, and I went into the round thinking, okay, you're going to swing free off the tee. You're going to, pick a target. You're going to swing free. You're going to swing hard. You're going to be aggressive. And then once you get to the green, you're going to pick that fat part of the green. And I played well. It definitely changed my mindset quite a bit. And, it was a fairly good round. So again, fairways and greens.
Yeah. It's, also another thing is, you can plan before you're around. I love people to make decisions before they tee off, especially on tee shots. You can go on Google Earth. You can go on one of the popular GPS apps on your phone. Look where the trouble is. If you have an opportunity to aim away from it and it's just rough on one side of the hole, that's an easy decision to make. Just try and plan out what the holes are like and what clubs and targets you're going to be hitting off the tee. I give some basic framework on how to do that in the book, but having those decisions made beforehand frees you up. All great course managers, when they are over the ball, they're locked in, they're decided, they're not second guessing, and they know they've got, the right target. So making the decisions beforehand makes the game a lot easier.
Yeah. And probably makes sense of why you play so well on your home course too. You know exactly where to aim, you know exactly what's going on. All right, moving on to number 3, growing your grit. Angela brought this up earlier too. And I just love this saying, growing your grit. Let's get into it, John.
Yeah, I think golf is obviously it's a difficult game that can make all of us frustrated and angry and lose our tempers and all the nasty emotions that show up on and off the course. I think in order to become a better golfer, you need grit. And when most people hear the word grit, they associate that with like negative, like white knuckling it and being like tough. And it's actually not. There's a wonderful book called Grit by a psychologist called Angela Duckworth that I really would recommend to anyone. And her definition of grit is perseverance and passion for long-term goals. And that, I believe, for golf is, staying positive, more problem solving, and a long-term view. So my example with my driver earlier, in order for me to be a better driver of the ball, or even a better putter, that was something I had to work on a lot. I had to have a long-term view on this and realize like there's going to be setbacks. It's going to be frustrating. There's going to be rounds where I hit my driver like garbage, but I'm going to have to commit to this and try and solve this problem. And that takes a lot of grit. That, this game is so frustrating. And as you mentioned before, Angela, like you're taking lessons and your handicap went backwards initially. That's very normal. But ultimately, like if you stick hopefully with the teacher's plan and it's the right plan, like the good things are going to happen, but it could take a few months. Mm-hmm. So golf tricks us into short-term thinking, but this is a long-term journey if you want to get better. And grit is like the cornerstone of that journey, I believe.
Yeah. Angela, when was the last time you were on the golf course and you thought to yourself, why am I doing this? Like because as golfers, we get in this spot and I say it, I probably get in this spot maybe 2 to 3 times a year where I'm standing on the golf course miserable and I'm having a horrible game and it's probably in a tournament. And it's just like, why am I doing this? This hurts too badly. Like some rounds just hurt.
This last year, our club championship this last year, I really thought that it was horrific.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I'm like, I have no idea why I'm going to show back up tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I did.
We all know what that feels like.
It's a very unique, I mean, I don't know if it's unique to golf, but I just know that most golfers go through that where they just are in the middle of a fairway and they're just like, what? I need to go home.
Why am I doing?
Yeah. I need to go back to my family. I need to go back to work. Why am I doing
like
this?
When you make the turn, should I complete the 18 or should I just leave now? I've thought about that so many, but I'm not a quitter is the only reason why I haven't, because it's crossed my mind so many times.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and John, don't you think that is part of the grit? Because that is part of golf. It's part of golf to have this roller coaster of a golf game sometimes. And usually when you get better, the highs and lows get a little closer. But as far as like, you just have these moments where you really want to quit.
I think that is like one of the capital THE habits in golf is that I try and make a commitment to myself, especially in tournaments, that even if I'm out of it, not going to make the cut. This is something I learned from watching Tiger all those years when he made cuts on Fridays when he was out of it. Like, again, I don't expect people to have the same dedication to Tiger or someone like that, but I just don't give up. It is my habit that I'm going to give each shot the attention it deserves, the best I can. And that, might not do me well in this round, but eventually, like, I see a lot of golfers who give up on rounds early. And when you do that, it creates that habit. And then ultimately, like, you will not get better if you're going to mentally check out after 5 bad holes. Like, eventually you're going to have this habit of saying, like, I'm going to go through a routine. I'm going to pick a target. I'm going to hit. And then whatever crazy stuff my mind does in between the shots, I'm just going to deal with that and move on and remind myself that I'm here for fun, which will lead us to our next.
Let's go into number 4
habit here. Actually, it'll be our 5th one. So we'll skip. We'll get to that. So number 4 is, I believe, super important. And most golfers don't do it, is review your rounds. I think one of the best habits you can have is to take 5 to 10 minutes after every round. And you could do this with stat entry stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's a great time to do this if you want to keep track of your stats. Go over as many shots as you can and look for patterns. Did I make some strategic mistakes? Did I go after that pin and short side myself and it resulted in a double bogey? Did I, try and lay back with a 4-iron? I still hit that club very poorly. And, it didn't give me any advantage. Were there some mental mistakes? Did I lose focus? Did I give up? Was I not, going through my routine? How was my attitude for the day? And then more importantly, I look for patterns in ball striking. So for me, like, I know my tendency with my driver is to miss it on the heel a bit, and I can kind of identify that from my practice habits. So I'm looking for any type of patterns I'm seeing on the course. I'm making note of them, and saying, do I need to practice on something? Is something making me really uncomfortable? The 70-yard wedge shots, my driver, my putter. Okay, I'm going to focus on that in my next practice session. Or maybe it's like my mental state. I didn't have fun. Why? Like, I need to think about that. And I think what a lot of golfers do in their rounds is that they remember all of the bad things too much and they don't give themselves enough credit for the good things. So it's also an opportunity to internalize great shots and celebrate them. And then for the bad outcomes, I'd prefer you to take a non-emotional / analytical view of those things and say, how could I have done that differently? Was this just the variance of golf? Is it something I could change? So I believe it's one of the great habits you can do if you want to get better, or even if you want to just have more fun, is like, just kind of go through the round and think about what happened. And it doesn't have to take an hour. It could take 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm a strong advocate.
Do you ever do that during the round? If you think about a post shot routine, do you ever think about that bad one or do you just move on from it? Because I think that sometimes when I say I think about it, am I focusing on it too much, or am I really trying to understand what I did that I don't do it again?
So I think there is, I gave credit to James Siekman for this. It was it was actually in a short game book of his, the post-shot routine. It gave me really good understanding of it. Yeah, I think everyone should have some type of post-shot routine. And I think it's the same type of attitude, is that, like, let's say I look for patterns on the course. So let's say I hit my first 4 tee shots to the right. After each shot, I'm like taking note of that. I'm trying not to lose my mind and just accept what happened. I'm like, I'm leaving the face open. I need to make a little adjustment to close that face. And through my practice methods, I can do that sometimes. Or maybe I'm not focused. So sometimes you do need to make in-round adjustments if you see a pattern. However, I don't want to be the golfer that's constantly making changes. Well, that one went to the left and that one went to the right, and then you're just changing everything on every shot. So there is a happy medium on this, but absolutely, I think having some type of post-shot routine that could literally take seconds is beneficial. And a lot of that has to do with, I hit a bad shot. All right, what did I do? It's gone. I'm done with it. Let's move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. That's probably the most important thing most golfers can do, is not bring the emotional baggage to the next shot. And that is really hard to do. And I don't expect everyone to be perfect at that. If you got 50% better, that's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
I hope we get 10.
I am a strong advocate for keeping stats, for sure. So even if you're just beginning with golf or you've never kept stats before, just start with fairways, greens, putts, start there and maybe those stats grow to more. But for me personally, when I keep stats on the golf course, it almost keeps me a little more focused too. Keeps me dialed in, keeps me concentrating even a little bit more. So, all right, getting into number 5, gratitude, the G word.
Yeah, I think this is something that was absent from my game, unfortunately, for probably like a decade or more. We've discussed what this game can do to us. It can make us, I mean, I've had, I've had moments on the golf course where it's like, it's hitting me on such a deep personal level that I'm like, it's making me think of myself like less of a person. Like it's so melodramatic.
No. And that's bad golfer, bad person. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it could really, I do think this game is different. You asked that question before. Like, yeah, I've played a lot of sports. I played basketball, tennis, hockey. Like I never felt that way when I played those sports. I've had moments where like I've played so badly on the course where I'm like, geez, like, what do you like? It really
like I must be doing something wrong in my life right now.
So I think the way to help combat that is gratitude, because if you are able to play golf, if you're able to take 5 hours of your day, there's a few things going well for you in life. Mm-hmm. Globally speaking, in a general sense. So I think there should be some baseline gratitude that like, I get to do this. I can do this physically. I can do this with my time. And, some of the points I made in that post was like, you're getting exercise, mm-hmm. You're spending time with your friends. You're unplugging from the world. I think golf is more important than ever because let's face it, like the digital world is destroying our attention spans. It's destroying mine as someone who runs an online business. And I view golf as an escape from that now. I love playing in tournaments. I always say this to my wife. I'm like, I can get into such a deep mental place now that I can't get to anymore off the course because I've got young kids. I've got, millions of emails and messages like we all do. Mm-hmm. And this is a time for me to like really zone in and focus. And I find that very comforting. So I think golf can be more important than ever because of the way our lives are. And it can satisfy your competitive desires, traveling. Like there's just such a long list of things that this game can give to us. And it's easy to overlook them when you get angry at yourself because you're not playing the type of golf that you think you should be. And, when you ask me my goals is like, if I can't hit the goal of going out and playing every time and having fun, then I think I'm failing at golf. Like, I don't care if I shoot a 67. If I was not happy shooting that 67, then like, what's the point of that really? Mm-hmm. Like that I'm getting a little too obsessed from a competitive point of view. And that's something I have to like wrestle with internally as well. Yeah. I think working on as silly as it might sound, like working on your gratitude is really important.
Angela, what's golf brought to your life?
I don't know. That's a loaded question.
What has it taken away from you?
I mean, there's the positives. The only negatives is the frustration and, various different mental, mm-hmm. Talking badly about yourself type of thing. I don't know how many times I've said I suck. I effing suck so many times on the course. I'm like, I don't suck at all. Yeah. Maybe at golf at times, but most things I don't. But friendships has been great. Travel has been really cool. Like now I no longer just travel someplace to go sit on a beach. I travel someplace I can also golf. Mm-hmm. So that's great. But I really just think camaraderie as much as anything, and something I can be competitive at again.
Yeah.
Growing up an athlete, it's cool at my age to be able to be still in some competitive outside of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need
agreed.
that.
And when I find myself, having a less than stellar round, it's like, okay, wait, I'm walking, I'm outside, I'm getting vitamin D, I'm with some fabulous people. There is more to it than just the golf. Even though during those dark spots, it's hard to see that, but it is a good, that's why I try and walk as much as possible. Cause it's like, okay, at least I'm going to, get the blood flowing, get some exercise and enjoy being outside, regardless of what actually happens on the golf course or with my score. So
I'm a nature person. So me stopping and just literally looking around will ground me. And that's something that I will find if I'm like finding gratitude in something, is just the beauty around me. Because oftentimes when you're on a golf course, depending on where you're playing, right, it's generally pretty. Yeah. So I really kind of take that in. The visual of it all is something that I'll focus on.
I think that's one of the best, that's what I do in tournaments to calm myself, is I take mental snapshots. I just look at the trees, like the wind hitting the leaves, and like just trying to absorb what's going on. And I think it's just such a great way to, again, take a moment and saying like, this is great. I get to do this. Like, this is awesome. And it's so easy not to do it because, again, you could be stuck like being angry in between shots. Like, I know what that feels like and it still happens to me, but I think no matter what level of golfer you are, there's different challenges the game brings, but doing something like that is like, even pro golfers can do that, more of that, and they will play better.
Absolutely. Well, getting into number 6, managing your expectations, I think goes hand in hand with the amount of gratitude you might have on the golf course at times too, because again, if you go in with these, a lot of players will break 80 for the first time. Angela, I think you did it this summer. And then you like automatically think, okay, wait, all my rounds, I'm going to be obviously breaking 80. Okay.
At least low 80s. Yeah. I'm not trying to be greedy.
No, but this is it's every level, breaking 100, breaking 90, having a handicap that does reach single digit. And then all of a sudden in 2 weeks, you're back to 12 or, anything, it comes with these expectations we have on ourselves and our golf game. So John, let's hear it. What do you have on this?
I think that's the most important topic that, there's 4 sections of my book, and managing expectations is the first part. And I think that's the feedback I've gotten from the book. That's the one that has transformed people's games the most. And my belief is, and this is just like a life belief, if you can't manage your expectations properly, like we as humans have this ability to create this like false narrative for ourselves and false expectations. And if we don't meet them, we get really upset with ourselves. And in golf, I think is on a very short list of activities that brings out the worst in that behavior. So we watch golf on TV and we see this version of the game that's not, whether we're watching the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, whatever, that version of golf you see on TV is not real. It's not even real for the pros. It's a highlight reel. If you watched any of the players any week missing the cut and shooting 77s, if we watched their rounds, it would look very different. So there's a few ways I try and help golfers manage their expectations. Stats are really effective, like showing people what are reasonable outcomes in terms of what's a quote unquote good shot for each skill level. And I guarantee you it's not as good as you think. Just hitting a green in regulation is something that should be celebrated. Hitting a drive, your average distance in the rough is fine too. If you have a clear path to the green, 2-putting from 40 feet, there's all these little events that occur on the course that golfers take for granted or even get angry at themselves for. And you're like, that was actually a good shot.
Yeah. That was well above average.
Exactly. So I even shared some embarrassing stories about myself in the book about, stupid things I used to do on the course because I expected, my skill level and expectations were so misaligned that I just couldn't enjoy myself. And I believe that's what happiness is when your expectations match your ability and what you're able to put into this game in terms of how much work you can do and how much time you can play. So if you don't get your expectations in line, like you're never going to get better and you're definitely not going to be happy in this game. It's the fundamental of fundamentals in my belief.
And even managing it, like if you don't enjoy practicing or you don't put that time in, how much of an expectation can you have to really get your game to another level? I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Yeah. So for some people who only play like 10 or 15 times a year,
or have the entire winter off.
Yeah. My advice to them is like, you know, I wouldn't even keep score. Like I would just go out there and just try and smack the ball around and have fun. Like if you're playing like 7-8 times a year, something like that, you know, I see people like that. They go out there and they go absolutely crazy because they're hitting all these shots. Like I went on a trip with some friends a few months ago. One of my friends was like, it was like the third time he had played in a year. And he's getting so angry at myself. I'm like, dude, like we're in, you know, we were in Vermont. It was beautiful. And I'm like, look, yeah, we're doing something fun here. Like, but don't like, you are not supposed to play well. Like, just end of story.
Just so like, you know.
Yeah. Like,
is he an athlete? He's an athlete.
And he wasn't even playing
right?
that poorly. Like, it was fine for how much he had played. But again, like, you've got to be practicing and playing a decent amount to see, like, unless you're some type of athletic freak, of course. Mm-hmm. I've been around some professional athletes who've done some crazy things on the golf course. But for the rest of us, you know, you've got to be spending a decent amount of time in this game to expect to get better. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that time, then don't expect that much.
Yeah.
But I think it's also difficult when you're out playing with somebody like you or Tori to not compare yourself to. I mean, I would probably add in the managing expectations as comparison to other people. It can really kill morale as well if you don't think of it from that way. But it's like, how much have I practiced? And this person plays 4 times a week, you know, 12 months a year.
You're absolutely right. And one thing I always tell golfers is like, there's always someone better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's always like you know, as much as people would play with me, like, wow, I wish I had your game. Like I'm around golfers who like, you know, when I play in tournaments, I'm like, oh my God, like, look at that guy's short game. Like I can't hit a wedge shot like that. Like there's always someone to be envious of, which is, you know, hard not to like, that's just a life thing. And yeah, it's so easy to look at other golfers, you know, their swings. Like I don't have a cookie cutter looking golf swing. I make some unorthodox moves, especially in the beginning of my swing. So I don't use video much, but when I look at my swing, sometimes I see other golfers. I'm like, yeah, I just can't do that. And that's, you know, that's what I got. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm working with what I got. So there's always something, no matter how good you get, there's always something to be envious of in other golfers' games. I think the best thing is like, what can I learn from them? Is there something they're doing in their demeanor or something like that? When you do play with a better golfer, it's an opportunity to maybe like learn a few things rather than being like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah. Agreed.
I need to see this unorthodox move though.
I know now I'm going to be looking through your Instagram feed.
You know, I don't post my swing a lot. It's not that crazy, but to be honest with you, someone pointed this out to me, a swing instructor. Look at Nancy Lopez's swing. I have a very similar, I roll my wrists open. I would say she's the pro golfer of any golfer who is that's the weird part of my swing is my takeaway. And it looks very similar to hers.
Yeah. I don't post my swing a lot for the same reason or because it's like, no, I don't need anyone from the peanut gallery telling me what my swing should.
You get 100 people being like, you should be doing this and that.
Exactly. Like no, thanks. No, thanks. All right. And then finishing off our 7th habit, having a process. So what does this mean? Like process into getting into a golf shot or just process of warming up? What is it?
I view this as more of like having a routine before every shot. And you can use that routine on the practice range as well. But I you know, someone who played a lot of other sports before golf, you know, one of the things that always frustrated me about the game is that it's not a reactive game. Like, you know, you play basketball, someone gives you the ball and they're coming at you, like you got to shoot. You don't have time to think. You just do it. Whatever other traditional sport you're playing, there's a field of play and people are interacting with you. Whereas golf, you're initiating the action and you have minutes to think about what's going to happen. So I think that, you know, I talk about inner athlete a lot. I think that removes people's inner athlete a lot. So if I look at why am I a lot better in a tournament now than I used to be, is I can get myself into a state where I'm seeing the target and reacting to it and just going into this autopilot state so I can access my skill more often. Whereas I think what a lot of golfers struggle with is that they don't have a process, and that's when they get stuck over the ball. They're thinking about all those YouTube videos they watched and those swing tips, and nothing good is going to happen. So, and I try and help with this in the last section of the book, is to help people build their own routine. Is what little process, it doesn't need to be a minute long. I see a lot of younger players in tournaments taking 2 minutes over the ball. And to be quite honest with you, I think it's ridiculous. There's actually a study on the European tour that showed that golfers who spent less time over the ball made more money.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was fascinating. So I think everyone needs some type of process. It's just something to initiate the swing. And, that could be, picking your target, your shot type, doing a couple of swing rehearsals, getting over the ball, doing your waggle and hit. And if you look at all the greats of all time and you start looking at all of their shots and major championships, like they all have their own process. And I think that helps with nervousness, indecision. A lot of the bad things that can happen on the golf course is you have this little mental cocoon, as I would call it, that you go into before every shot. And it's not going to solve everything, but I think it gives you a better chance to access your skill more often and make better decisions as well. So that's how I view process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say I probably have a process over the ball, in my routines, and probably half the stuff I don't really intentionally notice anymore.
Yeah, you don't even know. Like if someone asks me I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, but I do it the same way every time. Like every player eventually figures it out.
Yeah.
But it's something you do have to consciously work on. Like there are specific things I think about in my pre-shot routine when I'm on the putting green, and I do it the same way every single time.
Interesting. Angela, you have anything to touch on with having a process, a routine?
No, I learned from my friend Kirsten, growing up through junior golf. I would always ask her why she was doing a certain something when we first started playing together. And she was always like, think box, play box. And so her just thinking of that, I can see when she's thinking about something. And then when she gets over the ball, it's just play.
Yeah.
So I tried to focus on that a little bit more.
There's a line. It's an imaginary line. Vision 54 calls it think box, play box. I think everyone's figured this out on some level. Like there's a line you cross. Behind that line, you're doing your analysis. You're looking at your target. You're picking your, what shot am I hitting here? What club am I hitting here? Once you cross that line, then it's like go time.
Yeah, you're committed.
You're committed. You're not changing your club. You're going through some type of physical rehearsal that's the same, and you just go. And if you don't have a routine, I watch, a lot of quote unquote average golfers all the time on the course. They're so haphazard with, sometimes they're over the ball for 30 seconds. Sometimes they're over the ball for 5 seconds. It's very random, and haphazard because there's no, kind of like flow to it or structure to it. And it's something that you can work on, especially when you practice. Going back to intent on practice, going through that routine before you hit shots on the range is a great way to give more intent to each shot. And it will help build that routine that you can bring on the course. It's kind of like this little force field that protects you, I believe.
I love it. Oh, you guys, thank you. Thank you so much for being on today. Angela, thanks again for being on.
Sure thing.
I met Angela through our events that we hold, and she has become a very close friend of mine. And again, that's one of the main things golf is all about. The community is amazing. Amazing.
I've met so many people from my site or on Twitter in real life now. We've gone on trips together. Like that's the beauty of golf, is like it can bring people together that, it's just that's one of the awesome parts of the game is that we can share it together.
Exactly.
Trips or events. It's great that you're doing that. I love it.
So many things. So, and again, John, thanks for being on your podcast, The Sweet Spot. Do you guys release episodes once, twice a week? Tell us about it.
Over the winter, we're probably like 2 to 3 episodes a month. And then in the, once we get into the spring, summer, fall, maybe we're 3 or 4 episodes a month. So yeah, you can check myself and Adam Young, who's an awesome instructor. We kind of have similar philosophies on the game. So yeah, that's our podcast. We try and tackle as many topics as we can. and
then again, your best-selling book, 4 Foundations of Golf. I'm about 75% through. And like I said in the beginning, it is extremely relatable. And it's also a very easy read. I very much enjoy it. I know it's going to bring you much success, and congratulations on that. It's a good book.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Thanks again, guys. And all of John and Angela's social media and podcast links will be in the show notes. So check that out. Thanks again for being here. And until next time.